Hello and welcome to another edition of In the Trenches podcast. I'm your host, Seth Root, and unfortunately today my co-host Cal Davenport could not be with us. But today we have two very special guests on the program. One is my friend Titus Techera. He is the executive director of the American Cinema Foundation and hosts the ACF podcast. He is a contributor to Law and Liberty, Modern Age, and other conservative magazines. He tweets as Titus Films, where he gives some very insightful stuff on movies. Also with me is my friend Eric Madonna. He is a film designer and a movie enthusiast who lurks in film Twitter circles under the handle Con Film Buff. He and his wife also host a podcast called The Movie Shelf. Guys, glad to see you back on our program.
It's good to be back.
Well,
Good to chat about movies again, Seth.
Yes, no, I'm very glad you guys came back. I had a wonderful time talking with you guys last time because you guys are very insightful and know your stuff. I'm sort of like the person who loves movies but can't talk about them in such an intelligent way as you guys so eloquently do on Twitter, through your podcast and also through you guys' writing. So I'm glad you're back on. And so I thought we would just talk a few things, the films and review of, for films. Also looking forward to, the year ahead and what movies you're looking forward to. Some of the box office stuff that people have been talking about these past few days. So I thought we just actually should start there. I'm sure you guys seen, because Variety seems to be putting it up every day or something, that Spider-Man broke the domestic box office. I think now it hit $500 million, and which I think in the beginning of the year it wasn't the domestic box office wasn't doing much. It's only like in November, December that it's going up. And so I wanted your opinion, and because when we last talked about, the theaters and COVID-19, there seemed to be not many people going. And I wondered if that was the cause of if people are finally realizing that it's safe to go to the theater, or is something else at play? Eric, I'll let you start off.
Well, I'll start by saying thanks for having me on again, Seth. So yeah, I do remember last time we were talking about kind of what we thought might happen with theaters in the future. I remember talking about, since I live in the Midwest here in the U.S., that I was feeling a little bit more optimistic maybe than Titus was. I think even I was blown away by the reception of the Spider-Man movie, because I think that some of the pessimism had creeped in, because not much has happened in cinemas since we last talked. But I know people were forecasting, like, this might be $180 million movie domestically or something like that. And as you stated, it's blown that out of the water. And meanwhile, everything else that's coming out is continuing to bomb, including Spielberg's new movie, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yet here we are. And this isn't even the first Marvel movie. We had Black Widow this year and Shang-Chi. Probably some more too, I can't think of right now. But I think those domestically didn't even do that well either, right? Earlier in the year. So this is, I don't know, it's a surprise to me. It seems to be surprising a lot of people, but maybe it just has to do with the brand of Spider-Man and the fact that it's the third in a trilogy. That's kind of my thoughts on
it. Titus, did you have any thoughts of maybe why people are showing up at the box office? Do you think, as T2 as Eric said, that it's the brand of Spider-Man? Or I mean, maybe I'm being the more optimistic sort, but I think maybe people are not afraid anymore of going out of their houses to go see movies that maybe otherwise if HBO Max or Disney Plus would have put these movies in their streaming services, maybe they would have stayed at home, but um maybe they're taking a chance, on finally going out and seeing things in theaters.
I wouldn't hurry into it, but I understand that you're a younger man, so you gotta keep saying these nice sounding things. No, I don't think things that aren't Marvel are going to do well. Indeed, as Eric suggested, this new Marvel Super Spider-Man movie is killing a bunch of movies at the box office, including Steven Spielberg's incredibly ridiculous idea of remaking West Side Story. Even by late Spielberg standards, this is a catastrophe, and at least it's a very funny catastrophe, I guess. But there are other things. There is a Paul Thomas Anderson movie in theaters that people who like showy movies like. It's about Hollywood in the 70s, Licorice Pizza. There's a Wes Anderson movie out in theaters, which is funny and I thought quite intelligent. It's called The French Dispatch. But of course, it's only for the small number of people who like Wes Anderson movies because they look very funny and pretty. So there are other options. There are two Ridley Scott movies in theaters. I won't really recommend either one of them, but they're there. And Ridley Scott knows what to do with the camera and he knows what to do with actors. So some people are excited about it, but of course, they too are also bombing. Mind you, some of these titles are actually now Disney properties, largely because Disney bought over Fox. I will remind you, they ate up a studio because that's the reality we're dealing with. Disney is coming up on becoming half of Hollywood. And yeah, it's America. There can be only one. That's not something that makes me smile in the morning. It makes me think people will not, in fact, be going for theater viewings, except if it's this sort of Marvel Spider-Man thing. As Eric was saying, these other Marvel things are not great showings, but they did all right. And they put some new names out there or whatever it is that they did. It's important for Marvel to be unbeatable. They have not lost money since 2008. That's as close to an identity as young Americans have nowadays. It's as close to something national as anything. I remind you that hopes that Star Wars was going to bring America together were dashed. But Marvel is still coming up roses. They had also a bunch of TV shows this year, which are largely unwatchable and somewhat ridiculous, but people like them. They like to take this stuff too seriously. And so, yeah, it is unstoppable. And it is Hollywood. It is TV. It's another episode of the TV Marvel show, and it's the biggest show in America, and it has been for 13 years, and it shows no signs of stopping. And that's very sad. It's very sad. Happy Christmas. Happy birthday, Seth.
Uh, well, I mean, you mentioned a very good point in that, now Disney is half of Hollywood. And for a long time, it seems like Disney and China had a very good relationship. And now you're seeing Hollywood and China kind of at odds, so to speak. You saw I think Chang-Chi didn't do well, in the box office, and especially when they were really trying to, I think, gear towards the Chinese audience there. And Sonny Bunch has kind of noted this kind of souring relationship. Um, and it seems like China is trying to have their own Hollywood, so to speak. So they don't want the Americanized movies that you're seeing. I was wondering if this is a good sign, so to speak. On the one hand, you know, yes, Hollywood is very successful and blah 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 blah, but with this now cause, because it seems like for a while Hollywood has been trying to make movies for the global audience and not for the American uh, consumer. And so you're seeing a lot of dumbed down movies that I like some of Michael Bay's stuff, but sort of they kind of gone to an extreme with the Michael Bay explosions and stuff, and not really anything serious. But because the Chinese people love that type of stuff. So I'm seeing this as a good sign in one way, in that maybe Hollywood will finally start making movies that we all love and enjoy. I think we have very similar taste. And so are you seeing this as a good sign, a bad sign, Titus, or no? Or too soon to tell?
Well, I can tell you a few things. First of all, China does have its own movie industry, and it is doing much better than Hollywood, of course. You can just look this up. It's very easily found out. Most of the biggest hits in China, in Chinese history, are Chinese movies. Most of them have been made in the last 5 years. You have no idea how much money there is in this stuff, some of which are what seem like fairly silly comedies. Most of them, however, are hard on CGI action pictures. And it's not only is it a massive industry, it is not Hong Kong. They're not the actors who were famous in Hong Kong 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. They're not those directors either. It is almost entirely mainland, and it is primarily, almost exclusively for Chinese consumption, and Chinese people love it. Hollywood is dead in China. It's going to be not much bigger than it is in India, which is another world spanning, so to speak, nation state, civilization state, people sometimes say, that has also its own entertainment. It is not particularly interested in Hollywood. Even the notion that Hollywood is somehow global is gone. Not entirely a good thing, but it's something you should keep your eyes on, because you will see more of it. And of course, it's still true, as you said, that Hollywood is somehow trying to make movies for the world, whatever exactly that would mean. But it's not happening because the world isn't interested. There's less and less interest in the continent that accounts for more than 3 billion people, two countries that are close to half the population of the planet. And there is little Hollywood in there, and there's less year by year. So no, there's nothing even Disney can do for that market. I'm sure that Disney would love to stay in business in China, as would any number of other American corporations, because the alternative is dealing with Americans, and they do not want to do that. It's not, it ain't right, but there's a lot of money. So I don't really think either Hollywood will get a better relationship with China, or wise up and just give it up. This is something that can't be fixed nor stopped in the near term, I don't think.
Well, that seems good news to me in some ways, but Eric, what do you think, or do you have a different take than me about the relationship with China? Is this something that Hollywood should still continue, or should we finally break off and do movies that are for the American consumer?
I have wanted Hollywood to kind of separate from China for a while, at least stop caring so much about the Chinese audience. I think it's been bad for the quality of movies for years. And especially, Titus differentiated between the Hong Kong and mainland China. And the fact that they've kind of ignored the Hong Kong auteurs and they've gone for mainland and tried to get that support, that's been particularly bad. But I think I've seen the last few years that it might not matter as much as I used to think it mattered, because I think that Hollywood has been changing tastes with the way that it's operating. And so I think, I used to think the American audiences were more sophisticated, or they liked different kinds of movies that were more sophisticated. And I am maybe seeing that American audiences are wanting the kind of stuff that Hollywood was trying to make for China. And so now that there's something of a separation, at least temporarily, I think that the tastes have actually changed in America too, so that they're trying to Hollywood's still trying to make the same kind of movie because that's what they've gotten used to. And same with the American audiences. They've gotten used to it and they want that too. And the other kinds of more sophisticated American, Oscar type films are continuing to just kind of be niche items. Except it's getting, I think, even more of a separation than had existed previously.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned the American audience and how they have changed their tastes. I guess my question is what will win out I mean, will the Hollywood force, if China can't in that relationship can't come together, will Hollywood have to force the American audience to change taste, or will they just keep continuing that?
I think in my view, it's going to be they're going to just keep going. I think they can get both birds with one stone now, and they've been trying to do that. They've been trying to do it to please the American and the Chinese audiences, and I think that they've succeeded in changing, again, I'm repeating myself, but in changing the taste of the American audience in doing that. So now the American audience wants that, so Hollywood can continue. At least, we're talking blockbusters exclusively here, but yeah.
Well, that's disappointing to hear because, I mean, we love, I think, similar types of movies, and we're going to get to some of them that have came out this year. And I was hoping that maybe just by separating, from China, this will force people to actually, see different movies that they haven't really seen before. Titus, I know you talked about the Wes Anderson films. I don't know, outside of maybe 20 people have seen a Wes Anderson film, but they're very great, beautiful. My favorite is Moonrise Kingdom, of course, which you guys can go get on the Criterion collection. It's great. So I mean, I guess, I'm hoping, I guess I'm a little naive and hopeful that this will change things. But
have you seen Wes's new film?
I have not. I want to see that. I think it's actually out on in my theaters finally. So I'm gonna go see that. There's so many movies that I haven't seen, especially during this Christmas type season. Because I knew everybody, especially with Spider-Man being out, everybody is going to go and see that. So I'm waiting till it slows down a bit. So this week, I'm definitely going to go for my birthday, and go see a movie. And I want to see The French Dispatch, and some of the other. Of course, I might have to, go and see Spider-Man, but and I guess. Let's transition, because Spider-Man came out this year, and from what I'm hearing, there's some like meta, stuff going on in that film. I think Eric, in your tweets, you kind of mentioned that it's been a big success. So tell us a little bit of, both of you, just what movies you guys have seen, what for my benefit, because I haven't seen a lot of these movies. Just where should I watch on the pecking order, and go see first and such. So Titus, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah. How about we do this, Eric? We take turns and we recommend and counter recommend, so to speak, for the stuff we loved and the stuff that we love less.
Okay.
I can start because Clint Eastwood had a movie this year. I guess another year, another movie. Old man Clint is still at it, and it's called Crime Macho, and it's a good movie. He's acting again, and I don't think you've ever seen Clint like this. It's the close-ups are astonishing, and it's wonderful. It's it's a pretty good story. It's worth thinking about a little, and it's told in a very straightforward way. and I think people will like it. I liked it a lot, and I hope people don't forget about it. So you can surely stream it somewhere. I'm sorry, I don't know where to tell you to go, but it's called Cry Macho. It's Clint Eastwood and this teenage Mexican kid and this rooster. Really good. Go see it.
On that note, I did see that's on HBO Max. So if it's still there, go and check that out. But Eric, what kind of recommendation do you have?
First of all, Cry Macho is certainly one of the better films of the year. It works on an emotional level just extremely well. And like Titus said, the Eastwood still got it. I mean, there was a lot of talk of him being too old for the part. But I think when you see the movie, I think it really wins you over. I think that, again, it's like emotionally very successful, even though, even amongst the criticisms of him being too old for the romantic side of it to work. I think it's wonderful. Yeah, I totally back up Titus's recommendation there. I think for my recommendation, I wanted to think of something in theaters to go see. I haven't been terribly impressed with a lot of the stuff I've seen recently, but a movie that I did really like from earlier this year was David Lowery's kind of reimagining of the Green Knight story. Reasons I thought it was successful was, I think I've talked a lot on Twitter about this too with various people, and there are different interpretations of what's going on in the film. But from my point of view, it took this kind of medieval story about honor and it placed it really firmly into the context of millennials. And you have the Green Knight. So you have a man who in fighting the Green Knight and going and trying to accomplish this goal of winning honor, he kind of has to find out what honor means, because he's kind of like your typical modern millennial, just kind of awash. He's with women and he doesn't have a lot of meaning in his life. He's just kind of floating. And I think that this very modern version of that explores what it is that honor means in interesting ways and how we can have honor in a modern context. So I thought that film was great, and it's, I think, in my top 3 of the year, and recommend that.
Yeah. Titus, I know you've written a really good article on the Green Knight. People should go and read it. In fact, I think your article, your essay on it, really sparked a conversation about that movie. And so give us your thoughts about Green Knight, and then give us another recommendation for our listeners.
I don't think I can say anything better than Eric already has. Thanks, Seth, for recommending my essays. I can only add this: a bunch of conservatives I know who have an interest in literature, in stories that purport to reveal man's soul. They loved this movie more than any other this year, and I think that surely reveals something, at least about young conservative men. So I helped edit other people's essays as well, and I was also, like Eric, on Twitter trying to see what it is that people are saying about this stuff and how to help out the conversation, because it was obviously something of interest to people. And I myself found, as Eric said, it's maybe the best thing said about millennial men in cinema. Let me recommend some other movie. What should I recommend to you? Okay, here's a quick 2 strange things. One of them, Paul Schrader has a new movie. Paul Schrader is the guy who wrote Taxi Driver. This other Scorsese movie, Bringing Out the Dead, with Nick Cage from '99. There's a movie you should watch. And he's been making movies recently that deal with his peculiar concern of men facing guilt and trying to live with it or do something about it. And he has a new Oscar Isaac movie. It's called The Card Counter. If you like tough drama, these dangerous men trying to be tough, sort of stoic, it's quite good, and people who like movies, I think, will like this stuff. They'll have the kinds of surprises that people yearn for when they see new movies. And another one is even stranger. It's called Mr. Nobody. It's an action movie starring Better Call Saul guy, Bob Odenkirk, who is, by the way, a writer and director, not just dude who was on Breaking Bad and then on Better Call Saul, which is a wonderful show as well. But he has this movie about how he's the victim of a break-in, and he turns on these evil people who are breaking in and reveals his very dangerous hitman side, and sort of like The Equalizer, the Denzel Washington movie from a few years back. It's pretty good too. So again, if you like, one is more on the drama side, one more on the action side, but these are movies that people don't pay a lot of attention to, but they're much better than most of the stuff that has gotten attention.
Eric, any comments on any of those if you have seen them, or any other recommendations you might have?
I actually haven't seen either of those yet. Definitely one of my other favorites of the year is Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I know that came out in time for us to talk about last time we met. I don't know if we want to get into that now, because it's kind of been Snyder's year this year, because he's had 2 films release in addition to a movie that he produced, which is part of. So he released Army of the Dead on Netflix, and then there was, I guess he's going to launch a whole franchise from that, and this actually the second movie in that franchise has also already released, Army of Thieves, and that's also on Netflix. So yeah, I mean, if I could recommend that film again, I think superhero movies dominate cinema right now, and they have for years at this point. And I think this is such an interesting example, and I don't know that people are talking enough necessarily in terms of, like, kind of an end of year recap of what we've had cinematically this year. I don't know that people are talking about how interesting it is that Zack Snyder's Justice League exists, and I think it's worth reminding ourselves. I don't think anything quite like it has happened before. The fact that you get a major studio release of a movie that's been all chopped up and reassigned to a new director, and it's terrible, and it's pretty much universally accepted as terrible, and then you get a fan backlash that actually works, and the same studio a few years later releases what the movie was supposed to be. They give it back to the original director, and here's the real mind-blowing part, they give him another $70 million to do it again. I think it's fascinating. I think it's one of those stories that people who love Hollywood history, it's like on that level, especially when you consider the tragedy involved and the fact that Snyder's daughter committed suicide, and that was one of the big things that played into him getting taken off the film. All those things combine, and he comes out with his original vision plus a little extra, which he added on the end. His original vision for the film, and it's just so unusual. It's a completely different tone from what we get from the MCU, and in fact most other superhero movies of any kind. It's very mythological. It's a lot. I think even Snyder himself has mentioned that it's kind of Lord of the Rings inspired, and that's really, in my mind, what it is. It's a superhero Lord of the Rings, and I think it's fascinating. It's long, it's unwieldy, it's sometimes weird and sometimes not great, but at moments it just has these wonderful moments of romance and kind of classicism. And yeah, I think for me, it's really the movie of the year for all those reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched that movie 4 times and got the DVD, and so I mean, I hard recommend people watch, Zack Snyder's Justice League. One of the best films I ever watched this year. Unfortunately, I had to watch it on HBO, and I just wish that the studio would say, okay, let's make this put this in theaters. I know there were some, theatrical release in bigger cities. That I don't live in a big city, so but I love this film. This was one of the best films of the year in my opinion. But I noticed that both of you didn't mention any like big IP films, like Spider-Man, no sequels for the most part. I mean, it's very interesting that you guys are recommending movies that are not what you would call big blockbuster films. And I think that's great for people to hear and go out and see these movies, which are, maybe not as well known because they're not part of a big IP, thing. I wanted though, because there's one movie I haven't seen, but that I think everybody has universally said it's great, and that is Pig. By Nicolas Cage. I wanted to give it people, you guys, since you guys probably have seen it, just a moment to talk about the film, whether you liked it, and if it's something that people should go out and see. I think it's already out on DVD. So, Titus, what are your opinions on Pig? Is Nicolas Cage back, so to speak? What are your thoughts?
I'm a big Nick Cage fan, so yeah, I watched it. I thought it was pretty good. It's not my kind of film. It's as I've recommended action movies, I'll have more action movies to recommend. I think action movies are underrated and superhero movies are vastly overrated. So you could say that I'm completely upside down with the American audience now. I'm in a certain way much more at home with the American audience of the 80s. So, but the Pig doesn't have action, and it's strange to watch Nick Cage without the action. But he's really good, and it's a movie about grief. This dude has had terrible loss to deal with, and you wonder whether it's going to tear him apart. This seems to be the point of the movie. Is this guy going to fall apart? Is he going to go crazy? And I suppose to some extent people want Nick Cage to go crazy, but I like the fact that Nick Cage is not crazy. I think that really he's not a crazy guy, and I'm glad that he did this role. It's quite compelling.
I noticed that he's going to be doing a movie about himself that I am I'm intrigued and I really want to see. Eric, do you have any follow-up thoughts on Pig?
I agree with Titus. It's not necessarily my kind of movie. It's interesting. I'm seeing, especially in conservative circles, a lot of people saying it's the best movie of the year. I don't agree it's the best movie of the year, but I do think it's good. I think that it's kind of probably more unusual than what a lot of people would probably are probably used to, but at the same time, it has this kind of very like basic emotional heart to it about like Titu said, like loneliness, despair. I think that stuff works really well. It's got a lot going on though. It's really a very busy movie. Like there's some like Fight Club elements to it, and then it's about a chef that is a really good with working with truffles. It's such a weird mix of things. But I do think it works. It's just, not necessarily something I was especially attracted to per se.
Okay. Well, before we go off of our subject on about the year's the films that we saw this year, and go into 2022, I want to say that there are a few films that I've seen that I really liked, but that weren't released in theater. In fact, they've been on DVD for quite some time. My friend Techera said I should go out and watch Mud. I was changed by that film. I don't know what it was, but I loved it. I don't know why I did not see this film earlier. Maybe because of the trailer, it seemed very different than what I was expecting. I don't know if that was a marketing ploy by them, but I loved it. Also by the same guy, Midnight Special, two great films, as well. And also after listening to T2's podcast, I also watched Master and Commander. Also, three great films. It's so if you don't like any of the movies that are out right now, please go and see those. I really enjoyed them, and really go out and listen to T2's podcast along with Eric's podcast, because they give me some great recommendations that I have never heard or seen before. But with that, let's jump into 2022. There's a lot of movies that are coming out next year. A lot of sequels and big IP movies, like for instance, Avatar 2 is coming out. Finally coming out.
Is it really?
I mean, do we know? I don't know. They're saying that, but we'll see what Cameron is gonna do.
I have this vision in my mind of like opening weekend, and you get into the theater, and just somebody comes out and says, "Sorry guys, we just don't have it. It's just not here. It was supposed to arrive, but they just didn't deliver."
I wouldn't be surprised. Uncharted is another movie that's coming out. Death on the Nile, which is Kenneth Branagh's movie, sequel to the other one of those other films that he did quite recently.
Black Adam, Hercule Poirot story.
Yes,
it's
there
an
you go.
Agatha Christie murder mystery extravaganza.
Yeah, and that looks interesting. Along with Black Adam, the Batman, Top Gun Maverick. So what kind of films are you looking forward to in 2022?
I don't know yet. I don't know. I mean, I will probably see a lot of, like, okay, I'll say I'm somewhat interested in Death on the Nile. I liked Murder on the Orient Express. I didn't love it, but I liked it. I think that, I mean, I'm always interested in Branagh because I think he's an interesting guy. And I'll put it this way. I'm interested in his interests. So like when he does something, I find interesting that he's doing it, but I don't always necessarily love it. But yeah. So I think I'm interested in that. And I like his interpretation of Poirot. It's kind of over the top and fun. And, you know, he's got that giant mustache. And
I do say,
so other than that, Killers of the Flower Moon, new Scorsese film, that's coming out next year. I didn't even remember that. And that's through Netflix, isn't it?
I believe so, yes.
I'll see that for sure. I thought his last film was actually one of my favorites of his. Yeah, I'm not sure other than that. I'll have to wait and see.
Okay. Titus, I know you've been a fan of the John Wick films. I know that's coming out. Are you at all looking forward to that? Or what other films are you looking forward to as well?
I don't know what the new one is supposed to be about. The other ones I understood, I thought, and yeah, they're pretty good. Again, action movies, I like that. It's worth remembering that there are men in this world, and the action movie is one genre operation trying to remind people that there are such things as men, and that it's the least acknowledged. It's worse than a crime in America to be a man, and so obviously it can only happen in the action movie. Now, be genre, but unabashed. Beaten but not broken, down but not out. It's like in the action movies. Maybe they'll make a comeback. So yeah, I will go and watch John Wick 4 as well. I will not go and watch this. What is it called? There's all these goddamn sequels. There's a Top Gun sequel. I can tell you right now, it's going to be bad. You're going to be embarrassed with yourself. And there's going to be another Mission Impossible movie. That might be fun. I don't know yet. But all of these other things, there's going to be another Doctor Strange and another Jurassic World and another Avatar. This is nonsense, people. This is nonsense. And yes, let's remind everybody, Avatar came out in 2009, and this fellow, his name is James Cameron. He was supposed to make a trilogy of Avatar movies. Nobody wants, nobody cares about this stuff. But he has been working at it for 12 years because he has lost his ever-loving mind. What is wrong with this man? I am old enough to remember when James Cameron was making movies. This was before Seth was born. So he has made this silly Avatar nonsense thing that apparently it's taken him a dozen years. And it took him a dozen years, by the way, to make the previous one. And that gets us to before Seth was born, and he made the Titanic, which was trash. But before that, he actually made movies. It wasn't one piece of trash every 12 years, which, by the way, I mean, if you're going to make trash movies, the rarer the better in that sense. But the guy who made Terminator was good. He made Aliens, also good, and an action movie. So, and then he lost his mind. It's one of the strange stories of America, and it's probably to do with somehow Americans lost their mind about what faith is about and what technology is about. Terminator was about faith and technology. Tarkovsky, the Russian fanatic, the Christian Orthodox, also great director, master guy, loved Terminator, and he got it. It's the Madonna and the robot. Anyway, the point is that somehow America drove him crazy, and I think it's a big unanswered question. Why did James Cameron go crazy? So if I will watch Avatar 2, because apparently I'm not such a serious person, it would be just to find out what the hell happened to this guy who was once, he was supposed to become as close to a master as an action director can become, and it all went south. Oof.
I think you failed to give James Cameron credit. At least, I mean, he is bilking a lot of money from these studios and get nothing in return. I mean, he's a genius.
That's a fair point.
No, this is bad. It used to be, but think about it, right? That what Disney, Marvel, and the Star Wars things, and all these princess movies, what these things are doing to Americans, destroying people's minds, screwing with their kids. James Cameron is doing it to himself. He's building his own fantasy land. It's like a crazy 90s joke about Michael Jackson's Neverland, but it's James Cameron's Neverland, and it's called Avatar. He got lost in the virtual reality thing, and this is the sort of stuff that other people do to the rest of America, not just to himself. These are weird times, people.
I agree with all that you said about sequels. I mean, I'm hoping Jurassic World 4, they just kill all the dinosaurs and let it be done. I'm sick of it. I mean, I love Chris Pratt. Salute to Chris Pratt. I love what he does mostly. And the fact that a lot of left-wing liberals hate him just makes me love him more. But I agree. Like, most of the stuff I'm seeing are all a bunch of sequels and stuff that I have no real love for. Like I said, Jurassic World 4, the Batman, and some of these other ones that we've seen before. Like, we've seen what's going to happen in most of these, but we still go out and see them anyway. I will say, for my part, I am interested in seeing Top Gun Maverick, just because the cinematography looks wonderful in that. So for that alone, I'm willing to see that. I mean, it looks very beautiful and stuff. And I think it's by the same guy who's doing Mission Impossible 7. So directing it. So that should be interesting as well. But yeah, for the most part, most of this stuff looks like it's not going to be a good year at the theaters. But Eric, what were you going to say?
I was going to point out that look at what some of our our respected directors are doing right now too. I mean, it's Oscar season, and I just thought it was interesting that we got 2 remakes of classic Hollywood films. Spielberg remade West Side Story, and Guillermo del Toro remade Nightmare Alley, a classic noir. And I think it's interesting also to look at what's happening with our tastes. If you look at those movies, I mean, Spielberg's remake of West Side Story, I was actually excited for it because I thought he would do interesting things in the musical genre. And I found it basically, I mean, honestly, I found it boring. I thought it was much too melodramatic. I thought a lot of the reason that you would want to watch the original, I thought a lot of that was gone. And the changes that he made seemed to kind of go against the original theme, which was more about unifying different peoples. And the changes that he made kind of point out that like it tried to make the argument that it's better to balkanize, like changing the shop owner from the original is now a Latina woman who was married to a white man, and she's like regretting her life at the end because they give the song Somewhere to her, and it's kind of, I mean, these and various other things, it's like trying to specifically point towards like it's better that we don't try to come together. And so I thought that was very odd, and just really kind of a mistake to try to even remake it. And then Nightmare Alley, I thought was almost beat for beat like the original, except I think Del Toro was really only interested in making it more grotesque. The production design is beautiful. Some of the stuff at the beginning with Willem Dafoe, I mean, if you're a Dafoe fan like I am, I think it's very good. But other than that, I think especially like let's make something from classic Hollywood, but put a lot more blood in it and make the production's design look all sparkly and nice. And that's really all you're getting. You're not getting much more meat than that. And so I found both of those disappointing, and I thought just yet another example of decadence. And I didn't really get them.
You mentioned about Spielberg and West Side Story, and I've heard this from someone. If you guys listen to the New Thinkery podcast, they talk about political philosophy, Leo Strauss, and some of that stuff. But they also had a thing on movies, and specifically about John Ford versus Sam Peckinpah movies. And I forget who was the guest on that show, but they mentioned how the inheritor of John Ford was Steven Spielberg. And it sounds like in my brain, and Titus and Eric, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but West Side Story kind of separates, that lineage from because John Ford, in Man Who Shot Liberty Valance talked about equality, the Declaration of Independence, that whole, schoolroom kind of scene that is so famous today. And it seems like he's separating from that equality principle. So I guess my question is there really an inheritor of John Ford, or is that dead now? Titus, do I make sense? And if so, what do you say?
I know what you mean. And Spielberg was the closest America got to John Ford again, but he spent a decade making bad movies that are embarrassing to watch, and there's very little there. Seems like he wants to impress the liberals who have always despised him, and that has to do with he's an old man trying to leave a legacy, and it's making him worse and worse as a director. None of the things he made over the last decade since Tintin were worth making. That one was very good. You should go watch Tintin.
I rewatched it the other day, actually.
It's an introduction to what he does as a cinematographer, as his own, so to speak, cinematographer, since it's an animation. So well done. So it's an education in cinema. And it's a good story, well told as well. It shows you why America, the American heart beat to the rhythm of Spielberg cinema for decades, well into the 90s or not. But all of that's gone. It's not going to come back because he's a very old man and he's knocking on death's door and he wants some kind of legacy. And you know what? It really is hard. It's very, very hard to tell Americans something that they should hear and get them to listen. And he tried and failed, and it's made him worse for it. Some of these things you don't come back from. The end of the career of Spielberg is, as I said, the films are embarrassing, but the guy, what happened to him, that's heartbreaking. This guy was more dedicated to making everything right in America than anybody else, trying to show people that America has a good heart and cinema can help lead people to a more thoughtful understanding of the troubles that are typically American and which nevertheless go together with the successes of America. And so there's some reason for hope as well. Saving Private Ryan is, you could say, the best example of what Spielberg is trying to do for America. But I think it's also a very good example of how much that is a failure. That just does not, his ideas are not going to work out. And since then, he seems to have realized that in a certain way himself, instead of maybe these ridiculous movies about the 50s or, the mid-century America where liberalism was triumphant and confident and progressive, and it was all going to go in a completely different direction than reality. When he made fantasies, he was way more realistic than he is now when he is making vaguely historical pictures, which are silly fantasies. It's, there it is. But he was great.
Right. He was great, and definitely it seemed like he was the successor to John Ford. And I'm a big John Ford. I think we're all pretty big John Ford fans, and he's the greatest director to ever live in my view. And to see him kind of distance himself from Ford is saddening. And it makes me, because we need a successor to John Ford to tell what is good about America, and such. And you're not seeing that from a lot of directors today. So I hope. I mean, do you have any hope that there'll be someone to succeed? John Ford and bring what's good about America back, or is it just dead and never will come back? Go ahead, Eric.
That's a tough one. I'm not sure. I'm interested in hearing Titus's answer on this one.
Go ahead,
Titus.
Titus.
Busy behind the scenes here on the video, punting over to Eric. But you got me. All right. I think I can say a few things, but that vision of America, it cannot sell now. Something of it might. John Ford made the Western into a work of art, and the Western isn't dead, for example. So another guy I wanted to recommend to everybody is Taylor Sheridan, who made a new movie this year called Those That Wish Me Dead, which is pretty good. I recommend it. And even if you don't think you're in love with the story in the beginning, the third act is cinematographically amazing. You have not seen such a thing on screen. If you want to see the heaven and hell that is the American land, America, it's a continent, and here you see the great outdoors of Montana. It's awe-inspiring, and again, you've never seen it shot this way. Trust me, stick with the movie to the end. But this is also the guy who is now in the 4th season of Yellowstone, and who is directing this new show called 1883 about the origins of the Old West. Yellowstone is about the end of America, of the America we used to know. 1883 is about how the Old West became America. And so there, if you want to see John Ford, you would go to watch Taylor Sheridan's Westerns. He's also the guy who made Sicario and Hell and High Water. And so I think people already know some of his work, and he has had some success at festivals and at the Oscars and so on and so forth. He's really good, but as you were saying, Seth, he's a lot more Sam Peckinpah than John Ford. The circumstances of our times, manliness is agonized. It is not possible to step forth publicly and bring the country together. It's a strange world.
I mean, the movie that came in my mind. You mentioned Taylor Sheridan, but that James Mangold film, Ford versus Ferrari. I think that comes closest in my mind to say America is good. And I mean, yes, there was a British guy who was part of that team, but it was really like Ford was American and had the competitive spirit that I think that America embodied at the time, and it's something that I think that comes closest to my mind to a John Ford film, as far as showing America that it's good, and didn't go out of its way to kind of denigrate its past or anything like that.
Well, and it's interesting because it kind of it kind of makes a myth out of that story too, in a similar way. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a pretty good movie. There is enough truth to the story, and it does get a certain mythical framework that's it makes you think more. It's good, and it's about friendship between men, and it's it's well told. And as you say, Seth, you see that American power was still tied up with individual freedom, what a car used to mean. And as we're going towards the Tesla-led future, we should remember that. I don't know how the future will play out, but I'm pretty sure it's worth remembering what American men were like in the mid-century, since it was the last time there was a serious idea that society ran with. But if you like that, the better option is Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That is somewhat more on the heroic side. Male friendship and American freedom and all that.
That's true. But I mean,
and it's a Western in Hollywood.
That's true. That's true. But Ford versus Ferrari also deals with excellence, which it was really a great showing about, what it means to be excellent in what you do, and how to make a perfect, I don't know if that's the right word, perfect car. This is something that we strove towards. It's excellent. Now is a lot of movies it's not about that, which is why, again, why it's such a good movie. But you're correct about Quentin Tarantino film, though I think I put Tarantino more in the Sam Peckinpah genre, or that side of things. Am I wrong in that, or am I? I don't want to make it. I mean, he glorifies violence and sort of in some ways. He does make some heroic stuff. Glorious Bastards being one of them, but I always put him in that Sam Peckinpah lane. Am I wrong in that?
No, that's right. That's a good point. But there you go. Again, America has changed to an extent to which there are no John Wayne roles anymore. It's those problems are still there, and it's possible that that view of America that you get with John Ford could be restored, but it wouldn't look as good as it did then. You should go watch. It's a perfect movie for the period up to New Year's Eve, so on. It's a Howard Hawks Western called Rio Bravo from '59, starring John Wayne and Dean Martin in his best role. And Walter Brennan is in it, and Ward Pond, of course, and all these other guys, from John Ford movies. It's really, really good. But America isn't like that now.
I guess it will have to be.
People really are crazy. People really are scared about what the future is going to bring, and people really hate each other. And that's not easy to live down. It's probably a very good idea to watch these old Hawks Ford Westerns and remember that America used to be somewhat different, and remember what it might take to deal with this madness without going mad. But the wishing for that good feeling there was in the country in the mid-century, that you're not going to get. You just settle with the fact that in your lifetime things will not be like that, and make the best that you can in America.
Yeah, I think you're correct, because I mean, if Howard Hawks or a John Ford were to come up, today, it would definitely be a different type of movie, because of the circumstances we find ourselves in.
Seth, here's a movie that came out very recently. It's called The Courier. It stars Benedict Cumberbatch, this guy who is wasting his career playing, what do you call it, Doctor Strange or some this sort of trashy stuff they do for Marvel. But secretly, he has some talent as an actor and a certain interest in, you could say it's his class background, standing up for the English gentleman. And he made this movie called The Courier, which is about a true story. This Soviet dude and an English gentleman merchant smuggled thousands of pages of secrets out of the USSR into the West, to England and America, in the late 50s, early 60s. This is also tied up actually with the Cuban Missile Crisis. True story. Small movie, nobody gave a damn. It's good. And after you watch it and you think about it or talk with a friend, you'll see it's even better than you thought it was. And you'll want to watch it again. And it's strange that it's a movie about this, this very decent British guy and this very intelligent Russian guy, well, Soviet at any rate, and how they do this very risky thing. And it ends up in a quite terribly dangerous way. And it's all a true story, a Cold War spy thriller like you've never seen. If you want to see this sort of combination of strong moral concern and also kind of freedom from the sordid or the disgusting, that's so lovely in John Ford. It's the only one that came out recently that has that. The Courier, it's called, Cold War spy thriller. It's really good. Go watch it.
Okay. Well, we've given a lot of recommendations for our listeners, so we hope you guys all watch those. Eric, do you have any other thoughts before we close out? I know we discussed a lot of things.
Yeah. I'm sure listeners would probably like to hear a little bit about Dune. If we don't have time to address it, I would like to recommend Titus's article in Law and Liberty about he kind of contrasts David Lynch's Dune with the new Villeneuve Dune. It's very interesting. I think I liked the new Dune a little more than Titus, but but very interesting stuff. I don't know if you want to get into that at all, Seth.
Go right on ahead, because I love Denis Villeneuve. He's very, in my opinion, the most pro-life director we've ever had in the 21st century. I haven't seen Dune, so I don't know if he plays with that theme more. I've heard rumblings that he does, but you guys probably seen this more than and observed more than I do about the Denis Villeneuve and Dune. So I'm totally down with that. So tell us more, Eric.
You gotta watch that movie. Watch it. You will like it, Seth. Eric is right about this. Watch it. It's quite beautiful.
Yes.
Definitely. It's on my list, and I think it's actually in theaters still. So I'm gonna. It's gonna make time. In my theaters at least. I don't
know if Spider-Man might have knocked it off.
Yeah, Dune is slowly and surely flopping. Denis Villeneuve has an amazing ability to produce beautiful movies that flop because not enough people go see it. So do your patriotic cinematic duties.
Yeah, I thought Dune. So I read the book this year in preparation, and I thought Villeneuve really knocked it out of the park. You have the book, in my opinion, has some problems as a narrative. A lot of people love it, so I won't get into it. But I think Villeneuve. So there's a part of Titus's article that I thought was just so well worded. I should have highlighted it because I can't find it now. But he says basically that Herbert, the author of Dune, needed an editor. And in our film adaptations, we get the chance to get an editor to his work. I thought that was such an interesting point because I think that the way that Villeneuve takes kind of the core of the story, which is, kind of Game of Thrones-y, like you have imperial houses that are battling against one another, and you have a kind of messianic figure that's rising out of this, a kind of a rebellion. Obviously, Star Wars took a lot from the story. But you have that, and the way it's written is very legalistic. It's almost like reading an old document or something, like an old source document when you read the book. And to get the poetry and the simplicity out of that Villeneuve does, I thought was beautifully done. If you did miss the chance to see it in IMAX, I think it's kind of a pity, because it's one of those that I would say you have to see it in that format in order to really get what it's about, because a lot of it is a kind of audiovisual experience. There are just certain moments where it's almost overwhelmingly beautiful if you see it on the big screen with a big sound system. And you get, again, the kind of the heart of it, in a way that's very beautifully told and simply told. And I think people were disappointed that it ends kind of in the middle, because I think at the end, the pacing kind of goes off the rails because it tries to get some of that story in and misses. And I think the film up until the very end does such a good job of hitting the emotional beats and having these moments of beauty right where they belong. And then at the end, it's kind of like, oh, well, there is a story here and we got to go through this and this and this. And so I think people were disappointed by that. And it didn't do super well at the theaters, but I think it's one of the more beautiful things that we've seen in theaters. And it's worth seeing.
Yeah, I think that's basically true. I think the problems are with characterization, and that's why people didn't really it couldn't stick the landing, because people didn't see why it is these characters have to be doing these things right now. You could say that the movie is 2 hours of people pining for a catastrophe that's inevitable, and the last half hour you just see it in its dark fascination. It's amazingly well shot, but pretty disturbing at times to see all of this stuff. And the both sides of Dune, the two halves have this strange structure where there's an attack on one of these spice harvester machines, and then at the end there is a duel. Both halves have the same structure, and in between the two there's a big battle. So those are the three events that somehow give you action, and they're very important. But Villeneuve doesn't seem to have noticed too much of that, but he did notice that the first half ends with a duel, and that's a very important thing. But you watch Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. Superman has to kill somebody. There's just no way around it. You see what a heart-wrenching drama that is. There's no such problem in Villeneuve's movie. He just does not have enough drama for you to realize that when his protagonist has to kill that guy in the duel, that means a great deal. That shows something that will be terrible. And I think he screwed up the characterization, so I'm not as excited as Eric is, but I will watch the second half. And somehow this guy keeps losing money and people keep paying him more money to make these beautiful pictures. It's astonishing. And so they are funding the second part of the movie, which will be just as expensive. Can you believe that this guy made half of a famous science fiction story? Just half. But what if you never get the second half? Wouldn't that be weird? Well, somehow, even though it's not profitable, people still want him to make the second half. It is unprecedented, I believe.
Because usually when they make a part one, you've already been filming the second one. You already have approval on it. They did not have approval for a second one until this film was released. Crazy.
So I'm glad that it's going to happen. I'm pretty sure that the second part is going to be even better. And it is true said that this guy is strangely pro-life. He is not a right-wing dude. He is not a Christian, I don't think. But he is strangely pro-life. Nobody else is like it. And I do believe he will stick this into Dune. Dune is not a pro-life story, to say the least. But there is this thing where the protagonist, prophet fighter dude, Paul Atreides Muad'Dib, he has a mother who is pregnant, and she will have to carry that child to term. I'm telling you, this is going to be somehow the pro-life thing, and it's going to be even more tied up with faith than in other movies he's made, where again, pregnancy and giving birth, that is to say, man's generative power or life, and this strange way in which women are more powerful than men, is of great importance to Villeneuve, so it will show up again.
I'm hopeful then, because I love Denis Villeneuve, the movies. I thought Arrival had a very much pro-life message. Blade Runner 2049 definitely had a pro-life message, and it's weird because he plays this sort of dance with people saying, no, 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 I'm not talking about, pro-life stuff. I'm not that crazy conservative guy, but then he sticks it in like every time, any chance he gets. So it's interesting to see him do this kind of tap dance. And while fooling, I guess, people over and over again to go and see his movies, or at least people like us to go see his movies. So I actually wanted to bring about, I know he's probably not the explicit conservative, director out there, but he does seem to bring out some very conservative messages. And I guess this is the question I have is Denis Villeneuve probably the most conservative considering what his themes are? I know there's Craig Zahir, the guy who did Cell Block
Brawl in Cell Block 9.
In 99, yes.
Drag Across Concrete, that is a harsh, rough movie, but it's really good. Vince Vaughn and Mel Gibson, very good in it. Drag Across Concrete. If you like tough movies, you will really like that one. Brawl on Cell Block 99 was one of the most gruesome movies I ever seen, and I couldn't look away though at the same time. And his movies are explicitly conservative. Even there's a abortion, talking about abortion in his film, and deciding, to have the baby, that was like clearly a theme. But I like Denis Villeneuve's approach maybe a little better. Maybe that's just because it's not horrifyingly scary.
maybe so. But so
he does not give you nightmares.
He does not. That's true.
Yeah, Zoller is almost cruel. I mean, my goodness, it's like in Dragged Across Concrete when he sets up. I won't give anything away, but he sets up a certain character, and then it's just like, nope, cuts the character down, and oh my goodness, it's just brutal.
And his other movies that he's been a part of that is
there's an even harsher one that we don't even need to talk about.
Well, yes,
but I mean, if you like tough action movies that are intelligent and really well acted, and some of the writing will raise your eyebrow, as Craig Zoller, watch Dragged Across Concrete. You'll thank us.
Yeah,
very good idea, Seth. We should remind people to watch that. But yeah, Denis Villeneuve, he does not do harsh, he does not do sordid things, and that's always to be recommended. There's something light about the beautiful that he understands, and that's why people really like it. But that is also why it has nothing to do with conservatism. It's people will wake up gradually to this. You will wake up gradually to this. Conservatism is tied up with harshness. Conservative is tied up with everything that is tied up in the Second Amendment, for example. There is no getting away from that. People who are conservatives are for the Second Amendment. People who aren't. And that splits America up. Maybe there's a way to keep America together. God, I hope so. But I can tell you where the separation is, because everybody involved says it openly. Some people want to break up America over the Second Amendment, and some people want to keep it together over the Second Amendment. That is the basis on which there can be conservatism.
Well, do you think there is a kind of a unity that Denis Villeneuve gets at, probably unintentionally, with the fact that he does have this? Well, first of all, I think he's a director who appreciates beauty, and that's why his movies are often so slow. That seems to be his primary goal, is setting up the beautiful merging of image and sound. And I think, there's just kind of something you can't get around, which is that life is beautiful. If you want real, genuine beauty, you have to appreciate life and all that entails. And so maybe that's why his movies are focusing on birth and life and the importance of humanity. But I guess my question was, don't you think that kind of gets at the point where the sides can come together? That there is something unifying about just an appreciation of beauty in and of itself?
I'm not sure. I think it's a more complicated matter than you let on. I will tell you this though. strangers would notice about Americans that the anthem plays at ball games. People perk up, people stand up, people notice, they treat it with respect. Somehow there is something of the beautiful in the anthem, but it's not a special melody. It's just that it breaks people's hearts. And that has to do with knowing what America is, and it has to do with the fact that dead soldiers are wrapped in the flag and nobody else is wrapped in the flag. And if you don't understand that, you can't understand America. And if you do understand that, you can understand that conservatism and heartbreak, they are too connected to ever leave it at pretty movies. It's not the same thing. That's why John Ford movies were different. People remembered what had to be done. There's too much at stake, so to speak. And that is not something people can acknowledge nowadays. That's the reason we cannot have conservatism in art. It would demand something of people that ordinary people don't want. I promise you that you will raise kids and talk to your friends about Marvel stuff too. It's going to ruin America, but everybody likes it because they want the reassurance and they cannot stand that fact that the dead soldiers are wrapped in the flag and everything that says about what it means to keep a country together. And no artist can fix that. If people do not have that openness to reverence and to moral beauty, they can't quite get it. Everything else is not as important for Americans. Everything else is not something they can quite grasp. And that's one big reason why Denis Villeneuve movies flop. They're un-American. Not saying anything against the guy. It's not a crime to be Canadian. It's just like subtly mangle your name every chance he gets. That's patriotic. Mangle his name. He deserves it. Really, I mean, he's un-American. It's not a bad thing. It's just the movies are beautiful. I like them. But he does not understand what it means to be American, and he doesn't really care because it's not his problem. Somebody, it should be somebody's problem. I can tell you this much. Somebody should care. And if I ever meet the guy, I'll tell you. I think the guy who made Mud that you were talking about, Seth, Jeff Nichols, I think he cares. I think Taylor Sheridan with all these Western movies, I think he cares. I think these people bleed American. And I can tell you what America does. Nobody gives a shit about them. That's your reward. America will break your heart. I promise you that. Or you can be an American like Denis Villeneuve, and they will just throw billions of dollars at your movies. There's a lesson in there somewhere. I don't know what it is, but I've noticed these things.
No, you make some good points. I mean, when you were talking about the costs of how we got here, it reminded me of the man who shot Liberty Valance. We had to shoot Liberty Valance, and we have to pretty much give a noble lie to say Jimmy Stewart's character killed Liberty Valance. Spoiler alert for those who haven't seen it yet, but I mean, but you make it is a good point. And you also said about Mud and some of that. It does show the harshness, but there's also that sense of beauty as well, of these people, of these Southern people, and their livelihoods and how it's being taken away from them. So I totally agree with what you're coming from. I guess, I mean, I look to the beauty as Eric was talking about, and maybe I'm so mesmerized by it that I sometimes like the Denis Villeneuve way, of how he structures his movies and the way he portrays things and such. But there is sacrifices that I think we sometimes miss. So you make some pretty good points. But I think we should stop here. I know this has been a great conversation between us. We should all do this again. I didn't intend for us to go too deep, into this type of stuff, but it's wonderful. And I hope we do it again. So gents, thank you for coming on my birthday to talk about movies. It's what I love to do. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we leave?
Well, I want to say thanks again, Seth, and happy birthday. And it's a pleasure to get on and talk about movies. I mean, even I didn't think there was a lot of great movies this year, but we've had a great conversation about them. So, there's something to be said.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was fun talking again, Seth. And go watch The Tragedy of Macbeth, the Coen brother movie this time around, solo, starring Denzel Washington as Macbeth. What's more American than that? Go watch that one.
Well,
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. It opens, I think, January 1st here. So
yeah, me too.
Well, with that, we'll sign off here from In the Trenches. So have a good week, folks.